Hi everyone, welcome to another video here. It's Richard from Calvin Wazoo, and for some this is the much anticipated video about Teens of Denial by Car Seat Headrest. So yes, um, got all the lyrics on the inside, the cover, back cover here. The inner sleeve. Then you've got the inner sleeves, your Cosmic Heroes, reference to a song here, and then a quote from a Rumi poem, Hometown Heroes, and a quote from Luke, which I find to be more in line with Will Toledo's non-ironic irony rather than being a quote being used to, direct somebody to the Gospel of Luke. Anyway, I'll be talking about that image a little bit later. And then, of course, we got Napoleon Dynamite there. I believe that's who it is. It's been so long since I watched that film. Anyway, so yeah, Teens of Denial was released in May 20th of 2016. And it's, the first real album with Matador. Because, with Teens of Style, you've got a compilation of Will Toledo's favorites, I guess, and they were culled from a variety of different releases, particularly, ones that were and continue to be only available on Bandcamp. And then you have Twin Fantasy, but that's also a reworking, remastering of a recording that already existed. So, yeah, Teens of Denial is, in many respects, the first original recording with Matador Records. And it made a big impact in the music scene. Rolling Stone ranked it number 4 in its list of best releases of 2016. That's pretty strong endorsement there coming from a major, music outlet. And I think, they got it right, because Rolling Stone historically has really missed with some releases when they, debuted, dismissing many that later they came back and said, oh, this is a great recording. We were completely off our rocker when we reviewed it upon release. So they got it right, I really believe, by ranking it number 4 for releases in 2016. Now, I'm also really super excited because they're touring again. I've never seen Car Seat Headrest, and I am so amped about seeing them that as soon as they released their tour dates, and I saw that they were going to be in Chicago at a venue that, man, I can walk to this venue. It's just, it's about maybe 5-10 minute walk away from where I live. And I got tickets right away. And then they added a second show. Wow! So I got tickets for that too. So I'm going to see them 2 nights in a row. This would be in March of 2021 when they're in Chicago. And I did some checking or whatever, because I wanted to go see them a second time. But I was also kind of worried, on the second night, am I just going to see the same show? Not that that would prevent me from wanting to go, but, a lot of bands, when they are touring, they have a set list that they adhere to, for every venue. So it's pretty much the same set list every night. I mean, for years, Bob Dylan, when he was touring, it was the same bloody set list, for a decade, it seemed like. And then more recently, he finally shook it up a little bit. But anyway, so I went and tweeted about it. I tweeted my question, and somebody replied. It's somebody that identifies themselves as the letter B, and their Twitter handle is at Yafanoff, something like that. Anyway, they said the set list is going to be much broader, pull from a variety of releases. It's not like it's going to be a Madlow tour in which, Madlow is going to be the core contributor to the set list. So, but there is going to be, and they noted this in some of their pre-publicity information about the tour, that masks are going to be encouraged, and we're not talking about the mask, COVID kind. Although the venues, and rightfully so, are being very strict about proof of vaccination, not just a negative test, which is good. But anyway, yeah, they're encouraging the mask or costume theme, and that will be present during the show. So this, might be kind of fun. The venue that they're playing here in Chicago, I have seen. I've just seen one show in the past there. That was Scissor Sister. And whatever happened to Scissor Sister? I miss them. But it's a venue that's, it's not really big, and it's going to be packed. I know it will be. And it's a standing room only kind of venue, but I'm in a lot better condition and shape than I was when I was at that Scissor Sister show, because standing there, I mean, my back was just killing me. I mean, come on, guys, I'm an old man. So standing like that in one spot, and then, of course, if you have to leave the floor because you need to go to the restroom, it's like, no one, you've lost your spot, Anyway, it's still going to be really, really cool. Now, let's get to the record. Now, the key themes are again largely focused around, some aspects of dealing with depression, but also with the uncomfortable anxiety youth feels in a world that, one does not easily fit in. And I find this interesting, the parallel with the current generation and my generation on this level. So the younger members, I'm going to say, of Generation Z, whatever have you, and also younger millennials seem, to me, they have the same feelings as late boomers like myself. Not the entire generation of boomers, but we're talking about boomers born in the late 1950s and the early 1960s, such as myself. That, we also kind of succumb to this a general ominous feeling that kind of even bordered on nihilistic doom. And yet we cling to whatever minuscule bit of hope that we can find in our life and in our existence, and in the world. And or many of us went into a very superficial perspective and worldview that valued wealth and accumulation of things to denote success and personal value. So that happened in my generation. People who stuck to their ideals throughout life, or they jumped on the machine, and it's like the line from it's not the Eagles, but from one of the Eagle members, but it's that line, a deadhead sticker on a Cadillac, pretending or whatever. I hope I'm getting background noise from my neighbor, from them playing their stereo. I hope that doesn't interfere too much. You guys probably can't hear it, but I can. So anyway, the latter notion of being focused on the accumulation of things and this superficial perspective does leave one feeling empty, despite all the grins and gains you think you might be getting. So, but the former is also kind of a treacherous way to live because it can be fraught with all kinds of danger. But despite that, the dangers and the trepidation someone might feel, it can lead to a much more fulfilling and satisfying life if you can avoid the pitfalls of nihilism. Particularly the core notion of nihilism that nothing matters, that nothing what we do matters in the grand scheme of the thing, because it does matter within our own world. I keep going back to, particularly when I'm talking about Car Seat Headrest, to the anime series, and then the initial film, Evangelion, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and the end of Evangelion, because of the way they treat the concept, the Buddhist concept of anatta. I just find that so brilliant, because you can face the fact that as an individual entity, there is no me, because the self is always changing, and all the time we have opportunities to change who we are. And when we change who we are, we change to some degree the world immediately around us. And so that's the other direction you can go and not completely succumb to nihilism. Now, the songs, the other thing, that I can relate to with this recording is a lot of the songs describe scenarios and substance consumption that I'm personally quite familiar with. So it's really interesting for me to see and hear about these mentions in the songs. Because, as I was saying, my generation and my youth in particular was very much overshadowed by this dark cloud of potential annihilation through nuclear war. It was palpable in our existence. We had drills in elementary school, in case there was a nuclear attack. I can remember as a very young child, 4 or 5 years old, of recurrent dreams in which my mother was leading me down these stairs into this underground place. And just before we got to the bottom of the stairs, I turned around and looked up, and the sky blew up into this brilliant orange flash. So, yes, it was a palpable feeling, and this like this cloud of doom that we grew up with, and was very real in our lives. And to me, in many respects, the Generation Z or whatever faces a prospect that's similar, and that anything we do about climate change might be too late, other than open and violent rebellion on a scale that is far greater than the French Revolution. But at the same time, the Generation Zers don't necessarily have the heart to react that way, because either, of a deep feeling that people just need to be left alone and live a harmless life, or again, succumbing to the rapacious and self-absorbed point of view of, I'm going to get what I can and screw all the rest of you, because what's the point? So, I think with this current generation, that there is that, I believe you see that amongst yourselves, and are experiencing that. And it's very similar to what happened with late boomers. There's also, Will's observations of the whole party scene that are presented in this recording. It seems, it's like he's concluding that his peer group is largely in denial because folks are just getting trashed to avoid dealing with life. Again, I identify with that really strongly, because in my high school and college years, we were doing very much the same thing. I think every generation is kind of, getting trashed and that kind of thing. But, people who were doing that in the 80s, it was a different culture and it was a different point of view. And it was, frankly, to me, a little bit more self-absorbed. And that the whole party scene was just kind of a hedonistic response. But the party scene in, the 60s and 70s was a real heartfelt desire to, experience love and life as much as possible, and also a bit to escape and push back this atomic world we were, growing in. And I kind of feel like, without being too repetitive again, that the present generation is experiencing that same thing with looking at global climate change and feeling almost ineffective in terms of dealing with it, and frustrated with the older generations unwilling to unhitch themselves from whatever perceived gravy train that they have in order to do something about it. So anyway, let's get into the songs. All right, so the record opens up with the song Fill in the Blank, and it's a very strong pop jam. Really like this. The key line to me in this song is, "You have no right to be depressed. You haven't tried hard enough to like it." So, we're getting the whole thing about the dealing with the depression, and we've got the voice of those who are haranguing the depressed, and then the depressed people haranguing themselves, about the situation that they're in. The song seems to make some distinctions between those who don't get it about depression and think it can be solved by just arguing against it, and then also asking why and for how long, what can I do? It's you just remain silent, until they go away. So all these people are saying, this is how you're going to deal with your depression, and then the default response is, just sit there, let it go, until they stop and, go away. I can relate to that reaction to other people on both sides, both when people are, telling me how I should be dealing with something, but also when I observe other people, saying that, why don't depressed people just get off their ass and do something, the old adage that, someone told me this when I was growing up, that, we always need people around us, and to physically show me what they were talking about. They had me squat down and put my hands under my feet, and then they told me, now pick yourself up off the floor. You know, you can't do it. You know, in order to pick yourself up, you need help from others. So it's this paradox of keeping people away from you, but it's a defense mechanism because they just don't know you, and then but at the same time wanting to let people in who really can and be supportive. I want to make sure I cover some things, so I did write some notes. And that's the part of the song, where he's talking about the person who comes into your dark room and they throw open the shades and the windows and let the fresh air in, and it's like, snap out of it. It's like, okay, whatever, just go away. The bridge part of the song, the signs from the cops, signs from the audience, signs from God, the message is, stay down, stay the fuck down. And you see that, in life, with the police, especially when they're dealing with a person who is probably having some kind of emotional trauma going on, and their default response is, stay the fuck down or I'm going to shoot you. Kind of the same thing perceived, if you're a believer, that God is kind of telling you the same thing. Stay the fuck down, man, or I'm going to nail your ass bad. So the closing outro of the song is very, very strong. It's like Will is rebelling against whatever everyone is saying, while still clinging to that spot of light that we can call hope, even though the spark that he sees, that we see in another person's eyes, is only because they want to see him naked. It's that notion that when people show some interest in you, the bottom line is they just want to get off. It goes back to a very selfish, self-absorbed. We all behave that way. I behave that way. And I have to check myself and remember that this is another person. They're not an object. They're not a thing for my self-gratification. So then we got the song Vincent, which is a reference to Vincent van Gogh. It's got some really hard driving, strong power chords. The whole song is filled with this sense of urgency, and it mentions a Van Gogh image shown on the wiki page for Van Gogh not for Van Gogh, but for clinical depression. The souring old man at eternity's gate is the image. And Will's response, is, well, it helps to describe it. That painting, and Van Gogh was dealing with depression as well, and many of his paintings from certain periods, particularly when he was in Arles, I think is how you pronounce it, represent that feeling. It's about wanting to leave, but not wanting to go home. I mean, man, how many times have I felt that in my life? That of being in situations that I wish that I could just leave them and find some other place that was warm and secure and comfortable, which brings up these connotations about home. But I don't want to go home. Like the line from the Alan Parsons Project, I don't want to go home. I really love the next song, Destroyed by Hippie Powers. I just love this song. And it seems like, the hippie powers alluded to are those that break down one's ego, okay, to annihilate the self. So one is not so self-absorbed and become more, empathetic toward others. kind of what the whole, hippie thing was about. But the hippie thing also um, did succumb to personal and self-gratification a lot. The line in the reference, whatever happened to that chubby little kid who smiled so much and loved the Beach Boys. And then he explains, well, I killed that fucker. It's, kind of also, it's a reference to, earlier songs. I think it's the one that's on, oh, what the hell is it? Is it the opening track to, now I'm drawing a blank. Is it the opening track to, why, man, Mick Jagger was right. What a drag it is getting old. How to Leave Town, is it that one? Or is it Nervous Young Man? No, it's not Nervous. I don't think it's Nervous Young Man. But there's the reference to, Brian Wilson, and that realization that all these people that you thought were there to help you were really trying to manipulate you for their own, their own gain. The next song to me is so clever, Drugs with Friends. Now, the interesting thing is that I've read in some other publications that Will has said that he's only had one psychedelic experience, and it's described in this song, and it's that line, last Friday, I took acid and mushrooms. I did not transcend. I felt like a walking piece of shit in a stupid-looking jacket. Well, the thing is and I can relate to that as well. But the thing is with psychedelics and their potential for misuse, and I'm not saying that psychedelics are this evil thing. I mean, I can remember as a kid that, my God, people were, there was the TV film, Go Ask Alice, and, crazy stuff that just tried to scare people to stay, away from drugs. But the key element about hallucinogenics in particular is the concept of set and setting. And because psychedelics destroy the ego, they destroy the self. And that's a necessary part of the experience. And that's why they can be tricky. And to really take psychedelics as a recreational drug, while it, can be fun, I mean, I did it and it was fun, but there were also times when it was very uncomfortable. And it has a lot to do with set and setting. Set relating to the person's overall emotional sense of being. How secure are you in who you are? And how comfortable are you, with yourself? The more comfortable you are with yourself and have a sense of self-assuredness, then the set of who you are is stronger. But if it's weak, and if you're someone who is, overly neurotic or has other issues, taking psychedelics is just going to make your awareness of those issues really intense and can be quite frightening. Then the other element, setting, is the environment in which you find yourself while under the influence. And, that can have an impact. So even if your mindset is in a good place, you can find yourself in a situation, in a setting that really disrupts that harmony and can really blow things out. And then you feel like you're out of control and it frightens you because you don't know what to do. And if you've got both of those being negative, then that can really turn into a bad trip. So that's why, using hallucinogens as a recreational drug is always, every time, fraught with danger. And certainly they should not be taken when a person is alone. Somebody should be guiding you. I recommend two books to check out. And, one of them is this one, The Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. Now, I read this when I was in my 20s, and, I really, really liked this book. But then I read it again more recently, when I was like 60. And it had a whole different meaning for me, because the key character in this book, Harry Haller, is a 50-something-year-old man dealing with a midlife or late life crisis. And so it had much more meaning for me to read again. So, if you're a younger person and you haven't read this book, I do suggest reading it, but keep your copy. And if you're lucky to reach middle age or later, read it again. And if you are an older person who read this book in college, pick it up and read it again. I think you're going to have a much different reaction to it. And part of the reason I wanted to read that again was because of this book, How to Change Your Mind. And this talks about the psychedelic experience and its therapeutic use. But it also covers how psychedelics, basically Timothy Leary destroyed the credibility of research in psychedelics, because it was just, hey, everybody turn on, tune out, drop acid kind of thing. And a lot of unstable people who didn't have a good set and then found themselves in an unsupportive setting were freaking out and jumping out of windows and things like that. But this is a great book. And this is also something that kind of explained to me how taking hallucinogens when you're in your 20s is really kind of a waste. It's a waste of time, and it's a waste of the experience. The best time to be taking hallucinogenics is, after you're 40 and into your 50s and older. And then, do it with a guide, someone who is going to be with you, because, as I mentioned, the whole point of psychedelics is the annihilation of self. And you need somebody there to help you with that, to help push you and be brave enough to do that. And then you realize that when you annihilate the self, it comes back, but it's changed. Great book. I do recommend it. How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. All right. Anyway. And then I just like that song about, with drugs, with friends, the cleverness of that line where he's going, drugs are better with friends are better with drugs are better. It's just like this circle, that's saying that drugs are better when you're with friends. Your friends are better with drugs. This kind of circular thing. And it's a great description of the whole, party scene where there's so much potential for self-discovery and supporting each other, but it just kind of gets wasted. Anyway, the next song is Not What I Needed. And the original version of this included some references to the Cars song, Just What I Needed, but there was a last-minute rights issue and it had to be scrapped, that part. Anyway, my note here says the pre-chorus references tactics used by religious and other self-help groups that prey on the vulnerable because everyone feels a little bit different. Okay, so as we're growing up, we feel a little bit different from, everybody else. And there's this conflict between wanting to be like everybody else, but also to be true to ourselves. And a lot of groups, particularly religious groups and self-help groups, prey on this. and they want to capitalize on this. And this, essentially, it's a universal feeling that people have, but they turn it into this method, this tactic to recruit you into, their thing, with this message, join us because we understand you, which is just a lot of bullshit because, it's like cults, that they just want to recruit people and then they just brainwash you into the way they think. And the whole premise is based on this lie, join us because we understand you. And this is not what we need, and that's, to me, kind of what this song is about. The verse about porn being funny is, again, I kind of think it's him being ironic in his non-ironic style. Just, yeah. Now, the next song, Drunk Driver, Killer Whales. So on one level, this song is an observation of the party scene, and also an observation or an expression of wanting to do better and to be better. The constant struggle we face to better ourselves. And we make efforts, but a lot of times these efforts fail because it is difficult, in learning, who we are, because who we are right now is based on everything we've done and experienced in the past. And this creates this inertia of self. And to counter that inertia of this forward motion of the self is a pretty enormous task. Not impossible, but it is a big task. Now, but on another level, it is an observation of how the party scene is kind of like a collective effort that traps us like killer whales. We become aggressive toward each other because the party scene kind of, it bars us from experiencing and knowing life as it is, the way life is. The same way that killer whales in captivity are prevented from experiencing their true environment. This false notion that just because your basic needs, such as food and shelter, are being met, allows us to live stress-free. Well, that's bullshit, because that just insulates us from life experience. So that line, like he has in there, it doesn't have to be like this. So we can take the keys and get out of the car. We don't have to be doing all this. So it's more, it's a metaphor of drunk drivers. But the issue is, we don't have, just like you don't have to be a drunk driver, you don't have to drive the car. You can turn the engine off and get out and walk. All right. So the way we keep moving forward in our lives is very much like a drunk driver just trying to get home. We don't have to be doing this because we cause collateral damage, and we can stop. And it does take some concerted and conscious effort. But yeah, it's like, to me, he's saying the party scene, while on one level it seems like it's fun, is actually hindering us and is very destructive. The next song, the 1937 State Park, that references this photo on the cover. It seems like a really simple song about trying to make out in a car and being caught and then feeling shame because he was making out with another boy. So that's it's just, to me, a very simple song. It doesn't need a lot of analysis or anything. Now the next song, Unforgiving Girl, I'm wondering if this is an ode to a past fling of his. And the way it's kind of said that she's not unforgiving, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's forgiving. All right. So this creates some really interesting tension in the song. Just by saying that someone is not unforgiving doesn't mean they're forgiving. And I kind of like that. The line, what a glorious hell we have found. This is paraphrasing a Rumi poem. And, you know, we've got the Rumi, which one is it here? Yeah, the Rumi quote here, Rumi being a 13th century Persian poet. I need more grace than I thought. Just, yeah, don't we all? And then, but again, back to this unforgiving girl, she is being portrayed as offering some type of solace, perhaps. There's the line, it's an unforgiving world, but she's not an unforgiving girl. So there is this potential that this unforgiving girl can provide some comfort, but she's not necessarily going to automatically forgive you. And then we got the song Cosmic Hero, which I believe Will has said is kind of the spiritual child of Hey Space Cadet from How to Leave Town, but it's not quite as lo-fi. And there's this line, and of course I'm all right with death, but why do you talk about it so goddamn much? It really makes me think of the notion that I very much relate to. And that is, you know, I'm not scared of death, but the idea of dying freaks me out. So, you know, I'm perfectly comfortable with death being part of life. But the part about dying is kind of, that creates some tension and some fear. Then we've got this series of lines that are repeated. I will go to heaven. You won't go to heaven. It kind of exemplifies the whole judgmental nature of theology in general and the way religion gets used for all the wrong things, teaching erroneous conclusions. And, you know, I can tell Will has spent a lot of time, I believe he was a religion minor, you know, he spent a lot of time studying religions and their doctrines. And so I really do have an appreciation for what he's doing. In fact, there was a Billboard article where he talks about him being a religious studies minor, and that in general, all religions, you know, they contain the same elements of, you know, the best ways to live, but they all get twisted. The theology, the doctrine gets twisted into this assertion of, if you don't follow my way, you ain't going up to heaven, you know, which is that's a reference to what I just said, to a Frank Zappa song, to the album You Are What You Is. And then the bridge where it says, it'll be all right. It's like this banality of this soporific message. Be cool, dude. You know, which, it borders on that superficial notion of nihilism. And then when you hear that from other people, it really makes you want to punch them, you know? It's like, shut the fuck up, dude. You know, all this, oh, so happy, hey, just relax, dude, and be cool, you know, like, who is it, Moriarty and Clint Eastwood, World War II film, which I love that film. You know, cool it with the negative waves, man. I mean, there is truth to that idea, you know, that, again, going back to, we create our own reality. We have more control over reality than we might think. But it's almost like an apathy, you know, that, hey, relax, everything's going to work out in the end. Hey, the only thing that's going to work out in the end is we're going to die. Okay, that's the only thing for sure. So it doesn't have any notion of confronting anything or anyone. It's like a refusal to accept that actions and thoughts create consequences, and there are actions, our thoughts, combined with the actions and thoughts of others, create consequences, and we're responsible for that. It kind of makes me also think of the Talking Heads song, Heaven. You know, heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. You know, this idea that, you know, we're all going up to heaven or whatever. Well, then what the hell's the difference between being in heaven and living on earth if we're all going to be there? And then there's also, again, it's eternity. Nothing ever happens. It's just crazy, crazy concept. Now, the next song, and wow, I'm at 45 minutes. I'm really sorry about this. But is a song that strikes a lot of people in many different ways, and that's the Ballad of the Costa Concordia. So, a little historical perspective. The Costa Concordia was a cruise ship that sank within just a few hours after it left port, and it ran aground on some rocks because they deviated from its planned course, and then ran aground on this shoal. And then the captain also kind of abandoned ship. And while most people were rescued from the ship, 33 did die. And the captain was convicted of manslaughter. Now, the captain said he knew the waters well, and so he turned off the navigation warning systems. So the captain is kind of, in that occurrence with the song is in a way symbolic of the hubris of men, in that, oh, well, I know what's going on and I can do this myself. And then the disasters that are created from such hubris. The song, and this, I've talked about this in earlier songs with this record. It's very introspective, and it presents again the questions: can a person really change? When does a person fuck up for the first time? Is it gradual? Do we fuck things up just gradually as we go along? Or does it happen all at once? Or is it a little bit of both? So, there's that introspective part. But it is, as I said earlier with some of the other songs, possible to change direction. It's just really difficult. And most people fail this concept of going against the stream. There is the analogy in Buddhism that, the stream of life, is like a river. And when we step into that river, the force of the current wants to sweep us along. But the teachings tell you to go against the current. And essentially, you're trying to reach the other side. So, but at the same time, I really don't want to get caught up in all the minutia about what each line in this song means. I just think it's, again, a really effective metaphor to talk about the hubris of men. And the song does conclude with this notion of surrender. And you have the singer waking up next to someone he loves, and then he hugs them. So the bottom line here is that, we all need to feel as though we are truly loved. And knowing that this is the case, that we are really loved by someone, it's something that we all need, which means we have to love others as well. We cannot go through life seeking only love. We also need to give love. Go back to the closing line in Abbey Road. The love you take is equal to the love you make. The Ballad of the Costa Concordia is really a beautiful song. So, those are my thoughts on, there is a couple other songs here. Forgot about them. There is Connect the Dots, the saga of Frank Sinatra. And I must have wrote my notes on this someplace else. And I don't know where I did. But, with that song, it's, people have said that it's about Will's journey from the East Coast to the West Coast to Seattle, and He's again using the saga of Frank Sinatra. The little boy says, I'll be in love with my fists. Little boy says, I'll be in love with my punches. Little boy says, what should I do with my hands, Mom? Little boy is told not to do anything wrong. I relate to that in so many ways of, growing up, that I got a lot of messaging, not just from my parents, but from schools and things like that, to not do wrong. But there wasn't a lot of instruction on how to do good. And then the how to do good was so, again, it was theologically based with this idea that you do good because you want to go on up to heaven, instead of doing good just because it's the right thing to do. Not many people learn that, and I didn't learn that until much later, that the reason you do good is simply because doing good in and of itself is its own reward. And the more that you do, the easier it becomes and the greater the rewards that keep coming. So it's kind of an ironic contradiction that you don't do good because you expect good things to happen. You do good and good things will happen. Okay. And then Joe goes to school. This song about the horse. Again, this is why I didn't want to get into all the minutia of the different lines. Because again, there's a lot of people who try to project some symbolism on the horse, which very much might be there. But then again, it could be just Will or the singer looking at a horse and experiencing a horse along the side of the road, and then when somebody drives by, the feeling of self-consciousness. So you get in the car and you leave. I was just contemplating a horse. When have you done that? Look at a horse as a horse. When was the last time you looked at anything as just what it is, instead of projecting all this other stuff onto that object, which could be a person or anything? What if you just look at it for what it is? And when you do that, it's a pretty amazing experience. But then when other people come along, you can be made to feel self-conscious because it's the reaction, the world reaction around you is, what are you doing? That's so weird. That's the closing of this nearly an hour-long video. Oh, wow. This is going to take a long time to upload. This is a really great album. And also sonically, you start to hear Will and Car Seat Headrest progressing more and more away from the lo-fi sound to a more polished sound, sonic quality with the music, and also in song structures that give them greater flexibility for live performances. Some people, there's the hardcore people who say that, oh, I love the lo-fi sound, damn it, why did he jettison the lo-fi sound? Well, musical artists, all artists progress, they change. They don't stagnate if they're really true to their craft and are also really good. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, that Will Toledo is, to me, one of the most important musical characters around, and is going to be recognized in a way, and his contributions, I think, to, pop music that very few other people are recognized for. He is just a bit of a lyrical and musical genius on my part. And the growth is really quite noticeable and pleasurable. And the growth continues with his next release, Madlow. I'm really looking forward to seeing the concert next spring, going twice. This is going to be fun. Hope it's going to be a good show. And I really am excited about that. I hoped you enjoyed this really long video, and I apologize for its length. I hope it kept you engaged. I mean, heck, if you've got to pause it and then go back to it to finish it, that's fine. I barely was able to carve out the time to do this. I can imagine people listening and watching this. It's going to be difficult to carve out an hour to listen to it. But hey, leave some comments in the down under, please. Your thoughts also about this record. And if you think I'm off the wall about anything or missing the point. And, like the video, subscribe to my channel. And always remember to pray for the people inside your head, for they won't be there when you're dead.